Welcome back, everybody, to the Courage to Grow show with Jeff and Joe. I am Jeff, and I'm joined by Joe. Joe, how you doing, man?
Does it get any better? I'm at the cabin. It's a beautiful
Yeah,
day. It's the end of the month for recording time, and we're we're ahead of our goal, which is always good. And we have a very special guest.
we do, and I'm excited to introduce her and
Same
talk
here.
about her story. As you guys know, we love to talk about challenges and failures and how we rise like a phoenix from those ashes, how we have that courage to continue to grow in the face of that adversity. And honestly, she has dealt with a lot. I've heard her
Hell yeah.
story. We have gone through this before, and I'm excited to share it with everybody else. But we have Nada Buhendi with us. And Nada, how are you today?
Welcome.
I am doing great. I'm so excited. I really love, sharing my story, even if it's not glorious, because I feel more people need to hear the non-glorious story. And of course, I'm talking to you all, so I'm very excited.
We're
I
stoked to
love
have you
it.
here.
This is gonna be great, and you're right, like, it's not always glorious. In fact, I look at entrepreneurship as often not glorious, more often than not, and unfortunately, there's a lot of stories, a lot of people peddling this belief that entrepreneurship is just all sunshine and rainbows, right? And it's just not.
Totally.
Like, I don't wanna bring people in with false expectations. So, Nada, real quick for everybody who's watching or listening to this, can you give us, like, a 15-second description, what it is that you do, what you sell?
Yes. So I help professionals, mostly within tech, overcome imposter syndrome. And I take them from the journey of absolutely having no idea what they want to do all the way to converting their interviews into offers. And these are like six-figure offers.
Nice.
So
Awesome.
realistically, when I hear that, you're helping people get the dream job, the dream career,
Absolutely.
or work in a
Absolutely.
place, or find work in a place where they feel validated and they have passion again.
100%.
That's
100%. Most of
awesome. Good
us,
for you.
it's either people who are my, client archetype. It's usually people who feel like they have these golden handcuffs,
Mm.
and they don't want to leave because they're terrified that they're gonna be losing the money that they've been making if they end up, going after a job that they love. Or, people who just, are not employed and, they're looking for something that makes them happy, but they just don't want to settle for anything because we all know what it's like when you show up in the morning and you're dreading what you do.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? We've had, a few career coaches, in the SOS dojo as well, and one of the, like, the magic words that I've pulled out of conversations with yourself and with others is, fulfillment. It's like, are you fulfilled? Are you feeling fulfilled or happy? Like, are you unhappy in your current position? And we all know that when you're in a state of unhappiness, there's not, like, a set amount of time that you can necessarily like survive in that state. At some point, there's going to be a breakdown. At some point, you need to bail out, pull that parachute, and get out of there. So it's awesome to hear that you're having these conversations with them, that you're helping them find that dream gig and find that fulfillment. So let's kind of dive in with that then. Referring to your business, talk about maybe early on, like getting started. Do you have sort of a rough start story to share about this?
you can go all the way. I know a little bit about Nada's story. So,
Yeah.
Nada, you can even say where you came from and how you ended up
Absolutely.
here because it's
Absolutely.
huge.
Yeah. When you say, did you have a rough start? I mean, it wasn't just one rough start. It was multiple rough starts. I will say rough start from the moment I decided to leave my country of birth at the age of 18. I had a very rough childhood, very dysfunctional family. And I felt alone most of my life. And
Mm.
so my decision to leave that situation, it may have been easier than most people because most people feel like they have so much that they're going to leave behind that they don't make that change in their life. But for me, that was the driver. I was like, I am done, living in a home where I can't predict what's going to happen with my father being an alcoholic. Um, I am done, spending my life in a place where it's supposed to be my country, but I have zero friendships and don't feel accepted, for being a part of a certain religion or being part of a certain class. I was just done with all that. I didn't want to feel judged, and I just wanted to leave. And I felt that the best choice for me was to go abroad, get educated, and be able to be self-sufficient because I didn't want to be at the mercy of my father.
So can you tell everybody where you come from?
Yeah, so I come from a little island. It's called Bahrain, and it is in the Middle East. It's close to Saudi Arabia, it's close to the UAE. Those are the neighboring countries. So if anyone, maybe people don't know what the UAE is, but most of us know Dubai, and Dubai is a city within the UAE. So Bahrain is in that neighborhood.
And so you chose, I know where you are. I'm going to let you tell people. So you chose where to go. Where are you now? Where's home?
I'm in Toronto now. That wasn't my first home, by the way. I actually landed in Kingston at first, went to Queen's University, and then I moved to Ottawa. No, Kingston, and then I moved to Montreal, where I went to school. And then I moved to Ottawa, and then after that, I moved to Toronto.
And then for you, you got into tech yourself.
Yeah.
And from that experience, you ended up going from tech. Obviously, things happened, and now you are helping people within tech getting to their dream job where they're fulfilled, they're making more money, they have more passion. What happened within the work that you were doing that made you go, I got to get out of here and help other people?
100%. So I actually kind of knew what I wanted to do since I was a kid, but my family, being Middle Easterns, they were insistent that I should either be a doctor or an engineer in order for it to be a return on their investment when it comes to tuition. It would have been impossible for me to put myself through college here because I would have needed a work permit, and you don't get that as an international student. The laws have changed due to that, being extremely difficult for international students to actually, go through their education and pay an enormous tuition. But back then, that wasn't really a possibility. So when I was a child, I actually have this, it just keeps coming to me like this vivid image every time. But when I was a child, I struggled with learning in the classroom. It was very difficult for me to sit in a traditional classroom and sit through an entire lecture and retain it. I daydream, teachers would complain about that. Back then it was a little bit more conservative, where now, kids can get away with anything they want. But back then it was pretty strict.
And you're not alone in that process. How many people, I'm sure the viewer or listener would feel the same way. I mean, the traditional learning model of school was they're telling you. And it's the saying goes, tell me and I'll forget. Show me and I might remember. Involve me and I'll understand. And that's why
and I was more of a hands-on learner.
Yeah, for sure.
I think most entrepreneurs are
100%, because we have shiny light. Look, I want this. Holy crap! Look at that sparkly thing.
But you know what's funny, Joe, is that, so today when we look at it, we're like, yeah, that's the way we are because we're special, because we're awesome, because we're entrepreneurial. But back then, that's not how I saw it. I saw it as a flaw. And most of the teachers in the classroom turned it into this big thing that I'm dumb, that it's a flaw, that I'm not obedient, that I have a poor work ethic, and that's why I daydream. And here's the kicker to prove them wrong about me having a poor work ethic. So because I struggled so much retaining all that information, I'd go home, and this was at the age of like 7 or 9, okay? I'd go home and being the child I am, I'd line up all of my stuffed animals, and I'd take my textbook and I'd say, maybe if I taught this to someone and pretended
Wow.
these, stuffed animals were human beings and I was teaching it to them, I'd actually be able to learn this. I did that at the age of 7 and 9.
That's
So
awesome.
the only thought that went into my head back then, as a child trying to career coach myself, was that I need to be a teacher. That's
Yeah.
what I'm good at.
Yeah.
And I actually demonstrated that at the age of 17, 16, 17, when my mom ironically decided to transition from being in the corporate banking world to starting her own daycare. I helped her in a lot of her business, building phase. And at the age of 17, she had this idea of running a summer camp in order to create more visibility into her business, even though she was only working with kids between 2 and 6. She decided to do this side thing, which is a summer camp, because it was high in demand back then. And I decided to create an entire curriculum at the age of 16 to help kids how to use computers. And back then, you may know this, we didn't have all the fancy stuff that we have now. We had like 386 computers and DOS, and
DOS.
Yep.
Yes.
Microsoft Windows 3.1 was the new shiny
Yep.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
So it wasn't as, user friendly as it is now, where you can just give a 2-year-old a tablet and they'll rock
Right.
it.
Get it. Yeah.
It was hard to figure it out. And I was teaching kids things like typing,
hmm
like imagine 5-year-olds learning how to type. And I was,
Wow.
yeah. And I also taught a music class. I taught kids how to play the recorder. I put together a concert for them. And that was all, at the age of 16. So people were blown away by this. My mom had to sort of like not disclose that I was underage teaching these kids. And then all of these parents kept telling her, your kid is gifted, like she should be a teacher. And that sort of crystallized in my mind. And I remember I got into Vanderbilt University at their education faculty, but unfortunately, my parents didn't feel that that was a return on their investment. So I ended up going into Queen's University into engineering school. It sort of supported my dream. So I had 2 dreams. One dream was I wanted to teach people in some shape or form. The other dream was I wanted to teach people who struggle with learning, because I struggled with learning. People with disabilities, people who can't, learn in a traditional background. And because I was computer savvy, and was sort of thrilled with the idea of technology, I wanted to build products that would help people do that. But I didn't know how to go about it. And I thought, okay, maybe if I go into teaching, I'll be able to create these curriculums. But then my parents didn't want me to go to that path, and they wanted me to go to engineering. So I felt, okay, how can I make this work? Maybe if I learned how to be a programmer, I'd be able to make this happen. So I went into engineering school and I hated it. It
What
felt
a
like death.
surprise.
It felt like death. I
Yeah.
was like staring at a computer all day in a lab late at night at like
Yep.
10 p.m. at a Queen's University lab. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Queens is like, Kingston is like sort of like, like an old city in
It's
a
an
way.
old city. It's Canada's original capital city, and it's got a lot of character. It's
Yeah.
small, and I've been to Kingston quite a few times. It's got a lot of character. It's no Ottawa. No offense to anybody from Kingston who's watching. or listening.
And speaking of old city, Joe, I was in this old lab and there were bats like flying over my head. I remember I was
the
sitting in
Batcave?
front of my
It's the
computer, like,
Batcave.
trying to figure out this bug, like looking for this bug because my software wasn't working.
hmm
And this bat just flew like over my head. And I'm this Middle Eastern kid, like there's no such thing as exotic or like weird wildlife. Like, you people think like there are camels walking all over the place over
Right,
there. Not
yeah.
really. And there isn't like there isn't like what we have here, like squirrels, walking around and things like that. So for me, seeing something that I would see in cartoons that was portrayed as scary, just flying over my head and doing something that I
Sure.
hated,
Yeah.
that was like, oh my God, I'm done with this. I don't want
Yeah.
to do this anymore. I didn't sign up for this. I imagined my life, in the North American dream, not sitting in a dingy lab with a bat flying over me. Like it's just gonna bite me and suck my blood. Like I don't want to turn into a
Love it.
vampire.
So
Yeah.
you struggle through the school, you get your degree, obviously. What was the degree that you got, and what was the job that you got into? Because you ended up getting work.
Yeah, so I tried to suck it up for 3.5 years to get that software engineering degree and have that engineering ring to make my parents feel proud, but I just couldn't do
Mm.
it.
So yeah, it
Like
was something that
I
you're doing for your parents and not for you.
I did it for my parents. I didn't want I
Yeah.
mean, I tried to make it work because I have this entrepreneurial mind, right? Where I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
take lemons and turn it into lemonade.
For
So I
sure.
would always think, okay, they want me to do this. That's all I have. How can I turn this into something that is meaningful for myself? And I tried, right? Because my mission was to build these products. So I said, okay, maybe I'll just get into coding and somehow turn this into something that I can use to build these products later on. But I couldn't. I couldn't do it because, again, that traditional way of learning, it was killing me. Sitting in those lecture halls, like 200 people, and the professor would be like teaching all these things that you don't care about. And the way the curriculum was, all of the engineers were taking the same courses in the first year. You got like the mechanical engineers, the chemical engineers, the, geology engineers. And I'm like, I don't give a crap about a bunch of rocks and I have to lick this rock to identify it. Like, I didn't sign up for this crap. I mean, that's what I had to do in my first year.
Ugh.
I have such a horrible spatial orientation.
Oh, nada. I can't, just there's so many good jokes. I just will be quiet. That's so horrible. God.
It was torture. I remember I was sitting in front of one of the lecture halls, and I did that not to insult the professor, but because I'm such a disciplined person, and I was telling myself maybe if I sat in the first row, I'd actually pay attention.
Mm.
But the guy was so boring that I actually fell asleep
In front of him.
in front of him. I tried so hard, but I just
Yeah,
couldn't.
that's a recipe for disaster. And this, you know what? There's something to be said about the energy level that you bring to whether it's sales or whether it's a speech or to your work. And if somebody who's a teacher is boring, then the problem lies not in the student. It lies in the teacher. There's no question about it. They're doing a job, and it's a job. It's not a passion, it's not a vocation, it's not something that for them is fun. They're just doing it for the paycheck. And there's more to life than just the paycheck. Don't get me wrong, we all need to get paid. And so
Absolutely.
let's transition to the what got you into the business as
What got
we're
me to my business?
yeah.
So eventually, I left Queens. I gathered my courage. My parents basically wrote me off. They didn't want to talk to me, and I had to waitress under the table.
Mm.
Can't believe I'm saying this out loud. Please, Canada, don't take away my passport. Um,
I hope
Yeah.
not from this show.
I worked for cash because my
Yeah.
parents cut me off financially.
Okay.
They were like, "You're leaving engineering school? We're done with you.
Wow.
We're done with you." So I was waitressing one summer just to collect the cash and get into Concordia to go into business school. And it was great. I graduated with distinction. I did a co-op
Good for
program,
you.
and and yeah, my parents supported me again after they felt guilty seeing me waitress and being subjected to, because when you're working, this is something that not a lot of people know. When you're an immigrant and you're working, and I wasn't even an immigrant, right? I was like on a student visa. When you're working for cash and you're not on like an official payroll, you have zero rights. So you're subjected to harassment.
Mm.
You can be mistreated. And what happened was in the last 2 weeks, actually on that job, and I want to share this because I feel it's important. Not a lot of this is talked about. So, um, in the last 2 weeks, my boss was horrible. Like, I accidentally dropped a few glasses as a waitress, and I spilled water on a chair, and he accidentally sat on that chair, and he was so pissed at me. He made me sit on that wet chair, and I was
God,
waitressing for the rest of the night with a wet skirt.
yeah,
And
it's
so I stood up for myself because I was like, this is bullshit. I
yeah, it
shouldn't
is.
subject myself to that, even if I really, really need the money. I mean, I needed the money so bad, Joe, that I was living on boiled eggs. I was thinking to myself, what's the most like
Economical protein. Yeah,
economical thing that I could live
yeah.
on that would still enable me to perform, go to school, have high energy, and waitress all night.
Boiled
And it was
eggs.
boiled eggs. It had the protein,
Yeah, and it had the fats for energy. Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and the
yeah,
nutrients, and it's the cheapest thing I could find back
yeah,
then.
yeah.
So I was like, screw this. And I told him, I confronted him. I said, you can't treat me this way, man. So he said, okay, so you're fired. Come back the next day and collect your paycheck. I came back the next day and he said, you never worked for me. How are you going to prove it? You worked for
Oh
cash. You can't go and report me because you're not
no.
even supposed to work for me. So I lost 2 weeks of pay.
Oh my
And
God.
that might seem like
You know,
whatever.
it's a
2 weeks of
huge
pay is
deal when
nothing.
you're on the cusp, like when you're walking that thin, you're walking the line. Yeah, that's yeah, valuable lessons.
Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's fast forward to where you are now.
Where I am now is that I, spent 15 years, in the corporate world. I played so many roles in organizations. I got into consulting, technology consulting as my first job. I worked for one of the big five, and I learned a lot. Like, I'll be honest with you, I learned so much. Not so much. I mean, I was doing things that I wasn't necessarily overly passionate about, but what I learned was how to be savvy with people.
Mm,
Because when you're in consulting, it's cutthroat.
Mm-hmm.
They put you in positions where you're almost selling to clients. They put you in positions where you have to constantly negotiate with clients because they want like a Mercedes on like a Honda Civic budget. Um, and they throw you into projects and industries that you're not familiar with and expect you to run with it. And so I did that for so many years and played so many roles. All of the different roles that my clients play, I've literally played them within a span of 10 years. Like, I pivoted probably 5 times within my career. But as I was going through these pivots, looking for the next thing, because I felt that the next thing is going to be what I love, it just turned into one disappointment after the other.
Yeah, we've all gone
And
through stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the big realization, which I try to help a lot of my clients get to, is I felt I was overly reliant on companies to drive my career for me
Mm,
rather than me driving my own career
you got it.
and shaping it.
Yeah, it's like being an intrapreneur. You may be
yeah,
working for someone else. You still have to be, we all have to be responsible for what our decisions are and where we are headed within that company.
right.
And I find that fascinating that you're helping people be able to take that next step, whether it's within the company that they're working for or getting an offer from somewhere else where they can, for themselves and for the people that they're going to work for, take it to another level. Because you did that for yourself, didn't you?
I did. And how that happened was, whew, you know, in the first company that I joined, I stayed there 4 years longer than I should have. I knew
Mm.
within the first year that I needed to leave, but I didn't because
That's
I
like being
felt
in a bad
trapped.
relationship. It's like
It was
not good.
one bad relationship over the other, and it
Yeah.
was like a codependent relationship. It was
Ooh.
horrible. I just didn't know how to go about it. I didn't know how to. I didn't know if the grass was truly greener. I was also lured by the wrong reasons. It's almost like
What were
being
the
in a
wrong reasons?
relationship with a sugar mama or a sugar daddy.
Sugar daddy, yeah. So what were the wrong reasons? Was it money?
Yes, it was money, it was status, it was money, it was status, and it was ignoring the fact, and that is key because that is like the common thread that I've learned throughout my entire life. It was being around the wrong people.
Mm,
And by wrong, I don't mean that they're bad people.
they're just not
I
right for
just
you.
exactly.
Yeah. You said something earlier that I found interesting as an entrepreneur or just as a person. You said that you're a people pleaser, and I'll throw this over to Jeff. Jeff, did you ever find that yourself as well? Like, there's whether it's people within our program, there's a lot of people pleasing that goes on, and that has unfortunately an effect on their own bottom line.
I mean, yeah, like I think everybody has an element of people pleasing, and I'm like they want to make sure that others feel good around them, or
Yeah,
that
where they
they
love them, they
yeah,
feel loved because they're
I
happy.
gotta yeah, exactly. Like I have to feel that love. I have to feel like I'm liked, that I'm, supported by them or whatever. And definitely it's easy to do in any job.
Yeah.
Like you're not acting your wage anymore. You're acting well above your pay grade because you want to get that support, that love, that like. And unfortunately, that has also perpetuated the problem where now everybody has to act above their wage in order to like be accepted in the position. As soon as you start acting like the wage you're actually getting paid is when you start to like fall backwards in a job. You start to
Mm,
have like your superiors are no longer like looking to you for anything. They're starting to see like, oh, I think Jeff's underperforming now, even though I'm doing exactly what my job
right.
entails.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's easy to overdo it in just about any job. And like you stop thinking about, even if you get really into it, you get really bad, like I've been, and Nada, maybe you've been here too. You stop thinking about how much you're making. Like you no longer, it's not about the paycheck anymore. It's about this job. And that's the worst, when like the job is like an hourly thing. Like it's not I'm not doing anything crucial or important or game changing for industries or people. I'm just doing a checklist job, but I'm overdoing it. I used
Yeah.
to do I worked overnight at Home Depot when I was in my teens, late teens. And we'd have to move pallets around, right? Bring them out on the floor, restock. And they'd be like, "We got to move 30 pallets tonight." And I'd be like, "I'm gonna move 45." But like why?
Why?
Like why? For no
You're
reason
not
other
get
than
yeah, that's the interesting thing about competitiveness, entrepreneurship,
yeah.
drive. They're gonna these companies and the managers within, they're just
Mm.
gonna take advantage of people like you, Jeff, and
Then they
people
go
like
to you
you,
anytime.
Nada, because they go, okay, they want to be validated,
Yeah.
and don't get me wrong, everybody needs their strokes, everybody needs the hey, great job, we all need it,
Hmm.
and to be taking advantage of that without compensation is
Yep.
bullshit. I'm
Yep.
just going to call it for what it is. So Nada, now you're at this point. You've gone through these changes because I'm looking at our timeline and I want to make sure that for the show, tell us a little bit about how you got started as a coach.
Yeah. So looking back, um, I realized that my loneliness was my best motivator and my best enemy at the same time. To me, that's the common theme, honestly, and why I feel people actually get held back when it comes to either making changes in their career or business. My loneliness was the best trigger that got me out of my situation with my family, because a lot of people who would have been in my situation, they probably would have stayed with their families, right? Even if they weren't happy. And I was grateful that my family situation wasn't the best to give me the motivation to better my life and leave. And I
Mm,
had the courage to do that. But then when I came to Canada and did all these things, because I had this idealistic idea of this place is going to be my savior and I'm going to find my people and I'll be okay, then the thinking reversed and the loneliness became my enemy, actually, because I stayed at the companies that I stayed in because I was scared that I was going to be alone again. And I wouldn't have that support system that I artificially had at a large organization where it was cult like and they had all of these, parties and networking events, which I never experienced in my childhood. And even
Right.
though I hated what I do and I knew these people, had different backgrounds than me and didn't understand me, I ignored that because I was scared of being alone. And so it took me a while to realize that, holy crap, even though I'm surrounded by all of these people and I interact with them, unlike what I experienced in my childhood, I'm actually alone.
Mm.
And so that sort of decision was what got me to quit over text um, in my last full-time ever job and send that to my boss, who kind of like was my best friend in a sense, like the best friend that I
The
had,
work
the
best
first
friend.
best friend that I ever had in my whole
Yeah.
career. Um, Realizing that no, maybe this relationship is good and is better than what I had, but it's not good enough.
Right.
And I deserve better.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't deserve good, I deserve better.
Yeah. Of course. We all do. And I don't know at what level you could have a great friend. If it's still toxic, it's still toxic. It's just less toxic than what it was. Well, it's still toxic, man. You got to get out of that. And if you
Yeah.
don't feel right, and I think that's a lot of what you do. So where you and I both met in a coaching program,
Yeah.
and you now have to start selling yourself to people so that you can earn, and they've got to believe in you. Tell us a little bit about what there's a portion of our show that we like to call sales fails. We all have sales fails. What was it like for you at the start, and what is it like now when
My
you talk
goodness.
about having people buy from you?
Yeah. So I went from, like not being alone and feeling lonely to being alone, starting my business and not having a sense of direction in terms of how to navigate sales conversations, how to actually sell B2C, because I've never done that in my life. Like,
Mm.
I wasn't part of the sales teams in my organization. So I didn't even know how to start conversations. It was horrible. I had people hanging up on me. I was scared of putting myself out there. I would
Mhm.
go through these marathon of like, one rejection after another rejection. Sometimes I toot my horn too much. Sometimes I don't toot it enough. I was just lost. I
Mm.
was very, very lost. And that's when, you and I met. And it honestly transformed my life because not only do I now have a structure in terms of how to, navigate these sales conversations, but it also changed my mindset. It changed my mindset of, it changed my mindset of how I perceived sales.
Mm.
At the beginning, I felt like when I was selling, I was pushing people away. And again, all of that, like, desire to feel understood and and the need, to feel like I belong. Um, that was very important for me. And it's the reason I decided to create my business is because I didn't feel I belonged in that world and I wanted to create my own tribe and my own type of customers that I love working with. Um, and so when I learned how to sell the right way, I started attracting the right people that I enjoy working with
That's great.
versus what I believe other salespeople don't do correctly is they attract anyone and everyone
Yeah.
and force them into making a purchase, and then they don't end up building the right community. And working with you, Joe, is what enabled me to build a community of more than 130 people
Good for
that are
you.
so tight knit, because when I was selling, I was bringing who I am and attracting the right people who are like minded. And that is what makes me feel that I'm no longer alone.
Yeah.
That is so
130 people.
powerful
That's
because
130
you
people. Think
helped
about
me
it.
solve the problem that I've been carrying my entire life.
Oh God, that's so great.
Don't cry.
Nana, it's so awesome. I mean, I think of it 130 people. I mean, it's not just 130, it's everybody within those families.
Mhm.
Like that's you're having an effect on thousands. When you think about it, that one person could be married with children. So suddenly it's 800 to 1,000 to 2,000 people. It's what you're doing is that community of people that you now have. They're your tribe, they're your family. And what's great is you've become the leader that you've always been meant to be.
Absolutely.
Good for you. Good
Just
for
to
you.
give you like a quick example, of the type of community that I was able to build because of this. One of my clients, she worked at, a very reputable company in India, and she already had her permanent resident status. She wanted to come to Canada, but she had a baby. She was terrified that she'd come here and not have a job. And there's this whole thing, this big thing about how you need to have Canadian experience. We worked together, which was fantastic, and I was able to help her get interviews and things like that. But the thing that hit me in the heart the most, and when I realized that I achieved what I wanted to achieve is to create this community where people don't feel alone, is when she messaged me and she said that one of the very first clients that I worked with literally spent 2 hours talking to her to help her prep for an interview. He didn't have to do this, right? He
Mhm.
did it from his own heart. And it made her feel so good and confident that she wrote me and she said, one day, I want to be that person for someone else. And as a community builder, that's what made me the proudest, that I've built a community of like minded people who will never allow anyone in that community to feel alone.
I love it. And I also think we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. Unfortunately,
Okay.
our show is supposed to be 30 minutes and we're at 40.
Joe and I
so-
are talkers.
yeah, for sure. So
Just put us in a room and it's just gonna never end.
I'll be the time police here. I have no problem. I'll jump in on it.
We're gonna have to have you back. That's it.
Yeah,
We're just gonna have you
I'm
back because there's more to talk about in terms of running your business,
Yep.
some of the things that you've learned, and what you would give. We just don't have the time to do it now. So after we finish the
We're
show
gonna have to do
today,
part 2.
we're gonna do part 2. Yeah.
Okay.
100%. So, Nada, we really appreciate you coming on for this, taking the time to spend with us here today. Amazing story, tons of stuff that I think people can glean from this episode. And real quick, if you would, is there anything that you want to call out for anybody if they want to find you, if they want to
Yeah.
see what you're up to? Where would they do that?
Yeah. So my website is nadabohendi.com. Super simple. You can go on there. I live on LinkedIn. I'm there to serve people and give them amazing, content that's going to shift their mindset. Because the
It's
last
awesome content. It's awesome. No, I comment on your stuff all the time. You're on fire, girl.
Yeah. And so, hey, look, I don't bite. And sometimes, just reaching out to me is the first step. There's no pressure. Sometimes you
Great.
just need, someone to validate what you're going through, be your sounding board, direct you to resources. And if there is a potential that you could be a fit for my community, we can certainly get on a call. But if you're suffering and you're in pain, don't just not reach out for help. Like talk to someone who actually can point you in the right direction.
You bet.
So nanabohendi.com is where you can find me. And I love it when people send me DMs on LinkedIn. So don't be shy.
Awesome.
Well, again, we appreciate you coming on the show for today. And yeah, we'll be back with more episodes in the future, y'all. So Chaz, why don't you take us on out of here? We'll see you guys next time.